On October 20th, 2018, the citizens of Tipperary town and its surrounding hinterland took to the streets in protest over what they felt was years of neglect by local and national authorities. Much of the frustrations in Tipperary town echo experiences of many towns all over the country. For generations, Irish towns were the focal point of our communities, places for living, governance, trade and social interaction. But over the years, most of our towns have become less and less inviting. Dereliction and decay has a contagious effect. Now, the new National Planning Framework and the Town Centre First initiative are setting out to reverse this decline and bring life back into our towns and villages. In an ever-changing social and economic landscape, what would it take to make our towns attractive communities where people will want to live in again? Despite Ireland's population boom and our current housing crisis, Ireland's towns have been depopulating for decades. The majority of floor space above shops are left empty and prone to decay. And as retail shifts online and to out-of-town superstores, the future of our towns looks precarious. I'm on my way to Tipperary town to see the effects of this firsthand. Steeped in history, this medieval town of 5,000 people still exudes a small town charm. It is well serviced with all the amenities a town could need, nestled close to an exceptional scenic countryside.
When you look down there, you can see there's some quite lovely little views out that way. And Galtee Mountains in the background. You've the Glen of Aherlow just below us here. A wonderful place, really beautiful woodlands and great places to explore. So this town is on the gateway into those lovely landscape areas.
The main streets of Tipperary town were once bustling with people, life and trade. But it's clear things have changed.
What's it like with all the traffic?
I try to avoid this main street because the traffic here is horrendous all the time. It never stops. And early in the morning, the speeding that goes on with trucks, crazy.
Yeah.
365.
Yeah. And you know, has no solution come up? I mean, the footpaths are narrow and
yes.
You know, really it must be very difficult. And
it's absolutely crazy. Well, it feels like the town is forgotten.
And are you living in the town?
Yeah. That's absolutely typical.
The roar of trucks through the centre of Tipperary town is constant. Brian O'Reilly and Dennis Mulhare are two local business owners who've been campaigning for change in Tipperary. I met them for a coffee in the middle of the action.
Well, Duncan, I moved here 30 years ago from inner city Dublin, and it's a fantastic place to raise my four sons. But I've seen the town go in decline for the last number of years. When we came here, we had tan bands, we had Atari that employed 300 or 400 people. Now the only big industry we have here is the co-op. All the other industries have left town or just closed up.
And what do you feel needs to be done with the town? What's your big concern?
Well, the biggest concern is pollution and traffic. Noise pollution, air pollution and traffic.
So Brian, are you also now from the town?
Yeah, I'm getting involved in it because I'm the fifth generation with my business across the road, Revitalising Sports and Crystal Cleaners. So with all the traffic and everything going on every single day, it's really tough on people to even come shopping in town. Because as you can see around you, there's nowhere to park because everyone is bumper to bumper.
Brian and Dennis are advocating for a ring road or bypass to take the through traffic away from the town centre. But because of the river and railway, a ring road is particularly expensive for Tipperary town.
Dennis, I don't want to be shouting, but what are the obstacles against getting this done?
The biggest problem is budgets. The council are given an allocated budget per year and they have to spend it. If they held back the budget till the following year and pooled the budget, then we could have our ring road, instead of doing a bit here and a bit there, which isn't working.
Ryan, for you now, if all of this traffic was cleared out of the town, how would you feel, what sort of improvement do you think this would make?
It would take its time, but I think if, say, fellow businesses people that are coming into town and would see the opportunity of like an empty street, they'd start to open cafes, it'd be turned into like our neighbours in Cashel and Care. People could actually go from shops to shops, there's no rush of trying to get across the traffic. Like, it'd be a lot more pleasant place. And then once businesses start coming back into town and there's a buzz there, then you start seeing families start coming back to town because they start seeing it more of an attractive town.
In October 2018, the March for Tip demonstration saw thousands of concerned Tipperary locals take to the streets to protest years of neglect. Anne-Marie Ryan was one of the main organisers of the March for Tip demonstration, and on the back of that effort was elected to the council to fight for change from the inside.
We're just a group of ordinary citizens that came together because I think we just felt completely neglected by successive governments and our local authority, that the town had just been neglected for so long. We estimated that 5,000 people marched, which is more than the population of the town. Yeah.
So the whole town?
And we didn't. The whole town, and then people from the hinterlands, people from the farming community, they all came in.
That was incredible.
It was massive, yeah.
Anne-Marie, now that you're on the council, after the big protest, do you find that you can get things done now on the council, or is it happening there?
To be honest, I find it very difficult. There's only really two of us that are from Tipperary town in the council, and the council is North Tipperary and South Tipperary has become amalgamated. So it's a massive count. We're the biggest inland county in Ireland. There's 40 councillors. So to be honest, it is a struggle to get things done for Tipperary town. However, I'm hoping that now we marched, we got the attention of the government, the task force has been set up, which is part funded by the Department of Housing. We're just starting working on a plan, a 3-year action plan to try and turn this town around. When you look at spatial plan, you say what works if people want to live in the town centre. They want good quality education, good quality infrastructure, green spaces. We have green spaces in the town, and we have a River Arrow walkway that's about to be developed, which is a biodiversity walk. We've got the Tipperary Hills up here. We've got great green spaces on our doorstep. We've got the Glen of Ahalo. We've got a train station. We've got everything. But we also have tons of trucks, and we've got 50,000 vehicle movements a week going through the town.
It's terrible.
So how can you regenerate a town centre with that amount of traffic movement?
It's
a fundamental thing for us.
Right.
Infrastructure is just one way in which the town is striving to reclaim its identity. The proposed Tipperary Town Heritage Action Plan, the first in the country, is a concerted drive to reassert the cultural significance of the town.
Tipperary has a strong possibility of being a tourism destination because we have a name that's it's priceless, the name Tipperary. It's world renowned, it's known all around the world. So I think there's a lot of heritage-led regeneration possibilities with our name alone, our military history, our butter making, the list is endless really.
The vision of a new, rejuvenated Tipperary town is clearly there, but it's only through dynamic engagement between the local residents and the planning authorities that dream can become a reality. And there is hope. Raymond Lonergan has lived in Tipperary all his life. When the council proposed a new roundabout at the top of the town, where he had played as a child, he was inspired to propose a more people-friendly alternative.
Traditionally, this would have been an amenity area where skittles was played. There was Irish dancing, believe it or not, at one point during the festival. But the roundabout that the council proposed takes away from a very important space within the urban area, for people walking, older people, children, etc. What I took to the council was a couple of proposals to show them visually what the area might be like with a green space or a paved space, but just a space that people could use. The council, to give them their due, came up with this proposal.
Oh, this is the council's drawing?
Yes, it is the council's drawing, but
good.
based
so they're
on...
thinking this way now.
Yeah, and they've contributed.
Oh, good. You've created a public space here, and you've created a public space on this side.
This town has a lot to offer as regards amenities. I don't think roundabouts add to things. Not to be harping on about roundabouts, but I don't see tourists pulling up to take photographs of roundabouts in any place I've ever been. I think beautify the urban space. It's a heritage town. Have your cafes, attract people in. The people here will look after the rest.
This collaboration between the council and locals like Raymond brings hope of a new direction for the town. On the back of work done by the new task force, Tipperary County Council recently appointed a design team to explore a new N24 route to bypass the town. The council also announced a further €6 million in public realm improvements to include traffic calming, road and pavement upgrades, a new market area and riverside walk. I hope this is only the start of a long-term solution to the enormous traffic in the town and other towns struggling with the same problems across the country.
I've learnt a lot from the people in the town here in Tipperary today. There's about 4,500 people living with those conditions. And there's no doubt all of those cars and trucks that are going through the town, they don't want to be there either. They're stuck in this awful traffic, so nobody's winning.
Just minutes outside the town, you feel you can breathe again. And the wonderful landscape reveals itself. It's encouraging to see the people of Tipperary embark on a journey to reimagine their town. But to get a sense of what the destination might look like, I'm on my way to Clonakilty, County Cork, a town that's managed to overcome its own challenges to become a model for what a thriving town can be. Most of Ireland's towns are facing unprecedented challenges and rapid declines. For generations, Irish towns were the focal point of our communities. I'm on a journey to find out what it would take to bring our towns back to being family-friendly environments where people come first.
Coming into Clonakilty, a wonderful town, a very vibrant town, a very historic town. This approach into the town now with landscape of trees. And you know what you notice here, there's no sprawl on the edge of towns. There's no ribbon development. And you've got all of the old walls, you know, the historic part of the town still intact.
In 2018, the same year that Tipperary town held its protests, Clonakilty held a street festival, celebrating the success of their town. Urban planners across Ireland often use Clonakilty as an example to show how a town centre should look when redesigned with a people-first approach. But how did they get here? Somebody that's been here longer than anyone might have the answer. Never ask a lady her age, but Noreen Minahan was a primary school teacher here in Clonakilty and has seen the community and people grow up here over the last 9 decades. And she's in a unique place to tell me the secrets of their success. I caught up with her and her friend and local resident, Greta O'Donovan.
Tell us about yourself. How do you find your town here?
Wonderful town. It really is absolutely fantastic.
And you know
There's
it
no
is.
doubt about it. We've been very involved, Greta and I, in the tidy towns for years. About 78 is it? I'd have said 78 or 79. That's right.
So all of this started in 1978. That's over 40 years ago. So what was it like then in this town?
Well, particularly on the day that the rubbish would be collected, the bags of rubbish that were attacked by the dogs and by the crows and everything like that, it was an awful mess. And she took... Yes,
sorry, Noreen,
go on.
Interrupting you. It was the first sign. People who came off the ferry, for example, that's the first thing they would see when they'd enter Clonakilty is rubbish on the streets. And we just said, This has to stop.
And then there was one particular Saturday then when the whole town came out and the whole town started brushing and cleaning, and the urban council provided bags for the rubbish.
Right, so they facilitated.
They facilitated
Which
it.
is so important.
And we put all the rubbish into the bags and they collected it and disposed of it.
Right, so this is how your town started out in becoming such a lovely town.
And then Greta had a big meeting, and she brought a gentleman down from the department in Dublin. There's one thing I'll never forget. The man from Dublin said, "How can you expect people to invest in your town if you haven't pride of place?"
Cleaning up the streets was the first step in the longer process of reimagining the town of Clonakilty. And central to that was the work of town architect and former student of Noreen's, Billy Houlihan.
When Billy Houlihan came to Clon as the architect, he was a native of number 1, and he was very interested in the town, and he was very interested in colours, and he encouraged the business people of the town to go back to the traditional frontages. The houses around the square they were nice, but they were dull. They were tired looking. And when Billy came along, he encouraged people to develop these lovely Georgian doors. And I remember there was one lady, she lived over there. And she was interviewed afterwards about what did you think of the square and what do you think of Billy Houlihan's ideas and all that. And she said, "The doors are lovely, they're very nice." She says, "My door is toasted green. I don't like it, but it's what Billy Houlihan wanted." So when he gave us the ideas that we liked, we took them.
Clonakilty has thrived under the guidance of a town architect. And when Billy retired, that mantle was passed to Italian native Giulia Vallone, who over 10 years has played an instrumental part in changing the town's fortunes.
So Julie, this is an absolutely wonderful space. It could be in Italy, could you not?
It could be actually, yeah, Duncan. You can have cappuccino and pizza in here. And it's a very successful space, and it was reclaimed from roads. What this was before 2 roads and full of car parking is now a public square.
I noticed one thing, by the way. I didn't see any traffic lights this morning.
Yes, I have to say, Clonakilty is one of I'd say it's the only town in Ireland which has no traffic lights.
How do you manage that?
Well, we have a bypass road to go to West Cork, obviously. And again, the traffic is managed into the narrow carriageway. So the driver must become responsible of the speed because the pedestrian comes first. Rather than regulatory measures like signage, traffic light, road marking, this becomes purely on the human responsibility and the context that they can't physically go faster.
So when you were designing now for the town, Julie, what were your priorities?
The priority obviously is create almost a stage for the community, because the strength of those towns, especially in rural Ireland, are the community. And it's about cultivate that asset. So by giving a town square to this community, you can evolve by this. The biggest challenge in the end of the day is to attract people to live back in the town centre. We have seen how shops benefited about footfall after this intervention, but the further target is indeed to have people living about the shops. How do we attract people to leave the landscape or the romantic landscape outside the town and come back to the town centre? And this public realm, it's an asset we have. In effect, this is what we call vibrant and placemaking.
This is wonderful what you're doing here in the town. You've done already. But was it difficult to do this?
As every change, it's very difficult, Duncan. Nobody really likes changes. But when you propose a vision, and the vision comes from leadership or local authority where there is a multidisciplinary job in terms of various departments, you build up a vision and then you work together with the people. It's a very important participatory process where the citizens are involved into the design process, where they know why this change is required.
Julia took me to see the latest example of her collaboration with the County Council, a local flood relief scheme on the banks of the Argaideen River.
If I remember the last time I was here, there was no footpath. There was 2 lines of cars rushing through here, and there was no trees certainly here.
This road was two-way traffic, and there was a car parking here, there was no footpath here, so there was a good opportunity to reduce the traffic to one way and to address this large footpath for inclusive approach and trees. And we couldn't have done this unless the OPW, who did the relief work, worked with us together, and we designed together the effect, the delivery. In fact, the wall is also been designed to have planters, and the planters can add a little bit of green element and biodiversity into the river.
So why couldn't you, from the County Council point of view, have done it on your own?
We do have plans, obviously, for each street to deliver universal access and footpath. However, we don't have funding to do this type of project. So our policy is at every opportunity where there is works, either be road or flood relief schemes, we can build in this extra added value.
It's inspiring to see how far Clonakilty has come. Julia has continued to build on the legacy established by her predecessor, Billy Houlihan. Before I left town, I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to meet Billy himself, who is today project director of one of the town's biggest tourist attractions, the Model Village.
That's the main street now. With the original Clonakilty, the main street went north-south, and that was it there with the fair in place. When I was young, going to school on the first Friday of every month, that was absolutely what was on the street that time.
Looking at the Model Village, you feel you might be seeing the town as Billy did when he was town architect.
So as town architect over those years, how did you overcome the obstacles? Because every time you want to kind of bring in a new measure, you know, you're going to get pushback.
Absolutely. First of all, Duncan, I'd say that there was no formula. I think when people see nice things, improvements, they begin to say, well, how did you get that done? How did you do that? And then you sort of change the way you tackle it.
But if we move it beyond now the kind of the aesthetics to the real issues of people living in the town.
Behind it all, that was the focus that we had. How do you get people to stay in town? You will if you have a nicer public realm. Yeah. Like, people are not going to live in a place that's, we say, overrun with traffic, that's looking bad, that people don't look after, that people don't love, really. We know the towns are derelict now in the centres, in lots of locations. So we should designate those now for the future development and force new developments back in there using those spaces. There's a huge opportunity now to do new things because we're down on our knees really relating to our built environment. And there's an opportunity to do things differently. And there's a whole young generation crying out for houses. And this is our chance now to sell them something, a dream.
The secret to the success of Clonakilty is having an active community who, working under the direction of visionary architects and planners, take pride in their town and optimise every opportunity to make it better. Over the next year, all local authorities are going to public consultation on their proposed development plans. Constructive public engagement on these plans could offer the best chance communities have to breathe new life and vibrancy back into our town centres.